Good morning. It's Sunday, June 9th. It also happens to be my 67th wedding anniversary. Now, I grew up in the Bronx, in New York City, and I loved the city. And I used to make frequent trips as a kid into Manhattan to go to shows or movies or do a lot of things. And then I got married and I lived in the Bronx a couple more years. And finally, I was able to accumulate enough money to buy a house. And the best place for me to buy a house at that particular time was on Long Island. And so I had to find a job on Long Island because I wasn't going to be a commuter on the Long Island Railroad. That was not what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. And I did get a job on Long Island in the beautiful town of Port Washington. It took me about 35 minutes to drive to work every morning. And I vowed if I ever had to get a job off of Long Island, I would have to move out of Long Island. And I succeeded in my goal. I never had to take a job out of Long Island. I worked on Long Island at different companies for over 40 years. And I finally retired, maybe too early, but I retired. And I'm living very comfortably on Long Island. I love it here. And after I retired, my wife and I would go to see a Broadway show every Wednesday. We take the Long Island Railroad into town. We go to see a Broadway show, have a nice sandwich lunch at some tiny restaurant in the theater district. And it was terrific. And so now, when I listen to and watch the tales of what's going on in Manhattan with the crowds and the congestion pricing, and I look at congestion pricing and I say, that's very unfair. You work below 60th Street in Manhattan and you have to drive in for some reason. You're going to pay $15 every time you drive in, every day. That's $75 a week. Not many people can afford to pay $75 a week just to get to work on top of what other costs you might have. But then when I think about it, I'm wondering how many people really have to get to work. But they're estimating that they need to raise $1 billion to fix the subway systems. And the only way to do that, or one of the ways to do that, is with congestion pricing. And now that I think about it, not everybody has to drive into Manhattan. If you can take a subway into Manhattan if you have to. So how many people really, really have to drive into Manhattan every day? Well, there are those people who deliver things by truck every day, and there are some people that have jobs where they have to drive to work and then they have to leave the office to go do work elsewhere. So it's a complicated issue on raising the money to save the subway system, because that's what they're claiming the congestion pricing money is for. So I recognize the fact that the subway system has to be saved. I recognize the fact that many people use the subway system who don't necessarily live in New York. There are many that come into the city somehow or other and use the subway system, but they don't live in New York. So this is really a conundrum on how to get the money to fix the dilapidated subway system and anything else they want to fix. And that was the purpose of creating this congestion pricing, was to raise money to fix the subway system. I didn't even know how much it cost to ride the subway until I started this rant. So I had to look it up. And for most people, it's $2.90 to ride the subway. And there are reduced rates available for people aged 65 and older, and there's some other things, and then there's a Metro card, which costs you $1, but the ride is then $2.50. So there's many ways to avoid paying the $2.90. But still, that's a lot of money if you consider that it costs you like $5.80 to go back and forth to work every day. Now, I don't know, how people are going to manage to do that. And then if you want to fix the subway system, are you going to raise the rate on the fare? You probably should, but how much can people afford? So there has to be a better way to fix up the subway system. And they're talking about $1 billion. And they need to have that. And then they should have it every year. They should have $1 billion every year to keep the subway systems in place. But that's an astronomical amount of money that we're looking for. So maybe New York State should have a tax, a special subway tax or something. I don't know. This is really a conundrum. Every time you have to raise money like this for something that's important. And it's important because we haven't kept up with the wear and tear that the subway system and other parts of the city just undergo every day. That's because when the politicians get together, they find other reasons to not do the work when it should get done. Or they have budgets. And then if something happens and their budgets get all screwed up. I give you the example of the bridge that was hit by the boat and how much that cost. Come out of what pocket to get that all straightened out. So it costs a lot of money to keep a city in good shape. And that's the price you have to pay if you want to live in a good city like New York. You gotta be expected to fork over some money to keep the city in shape. But then you have businesses that have to stay in business. And they can't afford possibly to give people more money. So this is a really, really huge conundrum that the governor and the mayor of New York are faced with. And I don't know how to fix it. Maybe they could have a voluntary fee that people pay to help out. Maybe they should get donations to fix the subway. It's a real disaster that they're faced with. The city's falling apart. And they can't raise the money to fix it. So just thinking about this thing has taken a lot out of me. So I'll leave you with that. A city in trouble. No good answer that will satisfy everybody. Have a great day. Bye.